Hey there, it's Mrs. Marquette. Today we're going to talk about the second section of our conics chapter. So we're still going to be graphing, we're still going to be looking at characteristics of a graph. Today we're going to be talking about parabolas, and we've actually already done some work with parabolas, specifically parabolas that open up or open down. The difference today is we're also going to talk about parabolas that open left and open right. So we'll be looking at vertical parabolas, opening parabolas, and horizontally opening parabolas. So let's get started. So again, like I said, there are two types of parabolas. These are the ones that we're used to. This is a regular parabola. And the main thing you need to know about a regular parabola is y is isolated or y is not squared. Okay, so remember with circles we had an x squared and a y squared. Here we just have like a y equals something. Right, so if you remember from way back in the solving quadratics chapter, our vertex for these parabolas come from h and k. The important thing to remember is that this is an opposite since it's a negative sign, and this sign stays the same. The next thing that we look at is our a value. If our a is positive, then our parabola faces up like a cup. So this is a positive. And then if a is negative or a is less than 0, it opens down like a frown. So here a is negative. The other thing we look at for a is the actual number. So we don't worry about whether it's positive or negative, absolute value. If a is equal to 1, this is normal. If a is less than 1, this is like a fraction. Then it's wide. And if a is greater than 1, it is narrow. So this is like a whole number or a large number. And when I say large number, I could mean 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have to be like a huge number like 100. And then the axis of symmetry is always x equals h. So this goes through the actual vertex of the graph. Is this a function? So if you think about what a parabola looks like, if I do the vertical line test, okay, the vertical line test works all the way through the parabola, so yes, this is a function. Right? So let's just do one of these kind of to jog our memories. When we have y equals x squared plus 2, okay, we know that this is a regular parabola because y is not squared. Okay, so I'll write a note, not squared. So our vertex comes from h and k, so I get 0, 2. Notice that this is like x minus 0 squared plus 2. Okay, so that's why I've got the 0 and the 2. The number in front of x is 1, so it is positive. It's going to open up. So since it's a regular parabola, maybe I'll write that first. I know it can't open right or left. It's got to open up or down. Okay. Then our width being normal, narrow, wide, our a value is 1, so that's normal. Then our axis of symmetry is always x equals the x value, so x equals 0. So these are all our characteristics, and I can actually graph it. So I go 0, 2 for my vertex. It is a normal parabola facing up, so I draw my parabola, draw my axis of symmetry. We'll make it go through the vertex, and that's my parabola. Okay, so hopefully that feels a little familiar. We have done that before. The new stuff is our sideways parabola. So this is when x is isolated or x is not squared. And it's either going to open to the right like this, or it's going to open to the left like this. Okay, but a lot of our characteristics are actually still the same. Our vertex is still at h, k, but notice that our h is now by itself, and our y, or our k, is with y. The other thing to notice is that now our k is the thing that's opposite, and our h is the thing that is the same. Right, so when I'm looking at hk, now I just find h and k in different spots. You'll notice that here our h is with x, so our x value is with the x, and then our k value is with the y, so our y value is with the y. And if a is greater than 0, then it's going to open right. So that's kind of like when it opens up, it's going to open the normal way, so it's going to open to the right. If a is negative, it's going to flip and open to the left. But the widths are all the same. If a is 1, we've got normal. If a is less than 1, or like a fraction, then it's wide. And if a is greater than 1, like a larger number, then it's narrow. So the other thing we need to think about is the axis of symmetry is not actually x equals h anymore. If I look at what an axis of symmetry would look like, remember symmetry means like it can fold over on itself. So my axis of symmetry is actually a y line here. It's going to be y equals k. And this is actually not a function because if I do the vertical line test anywhere on the parabola, it actually hits the graph more than once, so like twice at a time, which is how we know that something's not a function. So if we want, we can graph one of these as well. I have x equals 1/2 y minus 2 squared plus 3. So I know that this is a sideways parabola. The reason I know that is because x is by itself. It's the non-squared variable. It's isolated. So if it's an x parabola, it's sideways. If I know that it's sideways, then I know it has to open either right or left. So it can't be up or down. I can cross out up or down. Okay. My vertex, the y value is with the y, and it's going to be opposite. The x value is by itself, so I get 3. Okay, so 3, 2 is my vertex. Since that 1/2 is positive, since the whole function is positive, it's going to open to the right. It's a fraction, so it's wide. Then the axis of symmetry is going to be y equals whatever the y value is, so y equals 2. Okay, so now this should again help us to graph our parabola. We go to 3, 2, so I go over 3 and then up 2. It's going to be wide, and it's opening to the right. And then our axis of symmetry just goes straight through the middle. And that is our parabola. Okay, so that's the thing that we're going to be doing over and over and over again. These 2 boxes will be on your guide. You've got to know how to use them. Okay, so you have to know where the a is. You have to know when the x value is with h and when the y value is with k. So let's look at a couple more. We've got y equals. So when it's a y equals parabola, this is a regular parabola. So I would get rid of right and left right away. Okay, the vertex, okay, my x value is a thing in parentheses. The x value is with x, so I get -3. And then y is by itself, the 1 is by itself. So the y value is just 1. Okay, now I notice that this is a negative. So negative means down, like a frown. And then the 2 says that it's narrow. Okay, axis of symmetry, match the x value, and we can graph. We can just kind of go to town. So go over 3, up 1, graph something that looks narrow, and down. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a sketch. And then we will graph the axis of symmetry straight through the middle. So once you get the hang of these, they actually go pretty fast. You find your characteristics and then start at your vertex. That's kind of your anchor point. And then just draw something that's facing down and narrow or facing right and wide, whatever it might be. All right, this is a pretty simple looking parabola, but sometimes the simple ones get us. So first I have to decide, is this a regular or a sideways parabola? And that comes from which is isolated, but they kind of look like they're both isolated. So x is the non-squared variable. So if x is not squared, then this is a sideways. And if you forget, go back up to your boxes and say sideways parabola. Oh, look, x is not squared. Here, regular, y is not squared. So since x is not squared, we've got a sideways, right? So we know it can't be up or down. It's got to be right or left. Our vertex, since there are no numbers with y, the y value is 0. There's also no number tacked on at the end, so it's 0. My 1 is positive, so it's opening to the right. Since it's a 1, it's normal. Okay, so if nothing's really happening, you're going to have all of the normal characteristics. Okay, it's not being stretched or squished or anything like that. And our axis of symmetry is y equals 0. So I've got my vertex on 0, 0. I'm opening to the right. My axis of symmetry is just straight through that vertex, and that is our graph. I think you guys should try the next few, see how many you can do. I'll just keep kind of trucking along, but pause, go through them, see what you can do on your own. Here, x is by itself, so this is a sideways parabola, meaning that it can't be up or down. Okay, our vertex, the y value is with y, so I get -2 for the y's. The x is by itself, the 3 is by itself, so the 3 is your x. Since this is negative, specifically a -1, it opens to the left. Since it's a 1, it's normal. And the axis of symmetry, match your y to -2. Okay, you don't have to memorize the characteristics, but it helps if you do. It will make it a lot easier and a lot more streamlined for you. So I go over 3, down 2, normal, and to the left. And here's my axis of symmetry. Number 6, this is a y parabola. So we've got a regular parabola. So get rid of right and left. It's got to be up or down. Okay. The vertex is going to be -1, 2. Hopefully you can see that the x is with the x, so it's opposite. The y is by itself. The 2 is by itself, so the 2 goes in the y spot. And then since we've got a negative, it's going to be down. Our width, we've got 1/3. 1/3 means wide. Think about taking Play-Doh. A third of its height is going to squish it and make it wider. And then our axis of symmetry is x, -1. For axis of symmetry, when it's a y parabola, your axis will be an x. When it's an x parabola, your axis will be a y. So you can kind of flip back and forth that way. So I go to -1, 2. It's going to be a wide parabola facing down. So there is our parabola. I can draw myself an axis of symmetry, and that is all I need for your graph. Again, clearly not perfect, but it's just a sketch. We're just saying, like, what does this graph generally look like? And the last two. I've got a y parabola. So this is a regular parabola. X is with the x, so 3. 4 is by itself, so -4. And since it's a regular, it has to open up or down. It can't be right or left. So I've got a +2 is up. Narrow because of the 2. And then x is 3 is our axis of symmetry. Okay, so go to 3, -4. Again, it opens up and it's narrow. So we kind of sketch and then do our axis of symmetry. Right. I should be able to see that you understand what it means to be narrow. So please draw it actually like a cup, not like a V shape. It should look like a parabola, and it shouldn't be super haphazard. It should look kind of like you know what it means to be narrow or normal or wide. All right, and this last one, we have an X parabola. X parabolas are sideways, so I can't have up or down. Right, vertex. The y is with the y. So the one in parentheses is always opposite, right? And then we've got a 4 for our other value. Since it's negative, it's left. That's a 1, so it's normal. And then y is -3. Okay, those 4 characteristics, the more you practice, the easier they will get. And then those are going to guide you in everything else. So I go over 4, down 3. And then we've got left and normal. So notice it's not a perfect graph, but it does look like a parabola. It looks like I didn't just like draw you somewhere. It starts from the vertex. It looks like a parabola, and then I have my axis of symmetry. So give it a little time to actually make it look decent. So those are all of your graphs of parabolas. Again, you'll be given all of this stuff, your standard equations of a parabola, your 2 types, but you've got to know how to use all of those. So be ready for a quiz next time, and I will see you later.